As the Detroit Lions get set for the home stretch of the regular season, and with the injuries continuing to pile up, it would behoove Brad Holmes to make these two critical moves to bolster the roster. We're going to talk about it, so stay tuned.
What are we? What makes us what we are and what we're going to be? It's grit. It's what we started with last year, guys. Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and 3 toes. I will beat your ass.
Can definitely compete with the big dogs.
10-5 end zone touchdown Detroit Lions.
You guys are unbelievable, man. I'm telling you.
We are driven by Detroit.
Hello, Detroit Lions friends, fans, and family members. Welcome on back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike, and as always, we're diving on in. My friends, I'm going to probably tell you something you guys already don't know. The Lions have got a lot of injuries. They've got a lot of injuries that are severe. They've got injuries that are in crucial spots on this roster. Everybody knows it. Everybody's talked about it. So I'm not going to go over the fact that we have injuries. Again, I'm the type of person where it's like, if you're going to talk about something and you're going to talk about a problem, don't continue to add to the problem. Present a possible solution. Well, as we already know, the Lions have injuries in multiple areas, and most of it is on the defense. But now, for the first time, the Lions actually have an injury on offense that is of a very severe nature. And that is because we have lost David Montgomery now for the remainder of the year because he just had surgery to repair a tore MCL. So that means there's no chance we're getting him back, which does suck, but it does not mean that the Lions are not without options. And the same is true also for on the defensive side of things. The Lions still have players on this roster that they can decide to use that actually, 1, we know have talent, 2, have yet to really see them play, and 3, could potentially surprise us depending upon what they may do. That is one option that the Lions do have. However, though, I know for some Lions fans, that is not exactly comforting news. That's not exactly something they want to hear. And I can understand why that is something they don't want to hear. They want to see that Brad Holmes recognizes that, okay, we clearly have a lot of injuries. We need to find ways to bolster this roster. Brad Holmes already recognized that at one point by bringing in Quan Alexander and by bringing in Jamal Adams. So I believe that given the nature of the fact that we just lost 3 more crucial players, 2 of which we have lost indefinitely for the year, 1 of which in Carlton Davis we might not be able to get back until the NFC Conference Championship game depending upon the recovery time of his fractured jaw, it would behoove Brad Holmes to make sure that, okay, we need to go out and we need to get some more players to help, bring reinforcements to the roster. The players that I'm going to suggest are one player that we are already very well acquainted with. The other player is one that just recently got released. So, who are the players I'm talking about? I'm talking about running back Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and I'm talking about safety Tracy Walker. Now, let's start with the player that we are not acquainted with, which is Edwards-Helaire. Now, Edwards-Helaire is a recognizable name for 2 main reasons. 1, he just got released from the Chiefs, which that in of itself is a reason because the Chiefs have been Super Bowl champions and, all that nonsense for the last couple of years. But also because of the fact that Edwards-Helaire is a former first-round draft pick, albeit a 32nd overall, first-round draft pick, but I digress. Why am I suggesting him as an option for the Lions to bring in? Well, number 1, the Lions have, as I just stated, lost David Montgomery for the year. We're not getting him back. There was initial hope that maybe his MCL injury was a sprain, but Dan Campbell confirmed yesterday that it is indeed not a sprain. It is a tear. It is going to require surgery. So at that point, we have now lost a major offensive weapon. And if there's one thing our offense is good at having, it should have, is a dual running back system. It is not a good idea in this day and age to have a single running back system. There are some teams that do it, such teams being the Ravens, but it's not a common entity anymore. It's something that's best used to be, done by two running backs to split and share the load. Now, why do I think Edwards-Helaire is a good idea? The reason why is because even though he is not anywhere close to what David Montgomery is, again, there's a reason why Montgomery was called Knuckles. Montgomery is more of your power back who is going to pick up the tough yardage. Edwards-Helaire is not that. Edwards-Helaire is more of a Swiss Army knife running back. This is a guy that can do a little bit of everything, and most of what he can do rather well. Well, in that vein, he is much more similar to Jahmyr Gibbs. Now, I know some people are going to be like, well, David, why would we want another type of Jahmyr Gibbs running back? I'll tell you why. The reason why is because, one, based upon the fact that the Lions have had a number of injuries this year, it would be smart, in my opinion, for the Lions to have somebody who can rotate in and out with Jahmyr Gibbs to, one, not only lessen his usage as far as, multiple plays, but also ensure that, hey, we have somebody else that can kind of do what he does, so that way we're not falling off too much when we're rotating Gibbs in and out. And I know that might sound counterproductive, but let's understand something here. It's better for us to have a guy that is very similar to Jahmyr Gibbs and, have that similar kind of, archetype of player on the field rather than Gibbs being the only option we have and we're pretty much burning him out. Because let's look at the situation for what it is. Craig Reynolds has been with this team for a long time. He knows how to play the position. We've seen him play very well with the first strings in a pinch before. So I have no doubt that if Craig Reynolds, plays with the first string offense, he'll do just fine filling in. It won't be obviously anywhere close to David Montgomery, but it will still be sufficient for the most part. But I'm more worried about making sure that Gibbs doesn't get overused in his capacity, so bringing in Edwards-Helaire would probably be a good idea because right now, chances are he's going to clear waivers. Nobody's going to sign him or pick him up off of waivers. It's been way too late since he got, cut by the Chiefs for anybody to even, remotely think he's going to have someone put a bid in for him, which means by the time he clears waivers, he's going to be looking for a job. Well, what better opportunity for a guy that's 25 years old, clearly has a lot of talent, has a lot of stuff, has a lot of gas still left in the tank? What would be a better opportunity for him to say, okay, the Chiefs didn't want me, the Chiefs didn't have any use or plans to use for me, why don't I go to an NFC rival in the Detroit Lions who clearly have need of a running back now and I can provide my, my skills to them? Because let's look at the situation for what it is. Running back is one of those types of situations that has a very easy kind of transferability because of the fact that it's like, listen, so long as you know where you have to go as far as being able to read gap assignments, you should be able to be plugged in almost immediately. Now, obviously, there's the whole thing about language, terminology, picking up pass blocking assignments and things of that nature. But if you're just wanting to bring in a guy that can potentially be a playmaker, be like, hey, we're going to start you off with a couple of plays, a couple of concepts, and as time goes by, we're going to build you up so that way we can use you a little bit more. Then I don't think there's anything wrong with bringing in Edwards-Helaire on a flyer just to say, hey, we have another rotational depth piece. We have a guy that's a kind of poor man version of Gibbs, so that way we don't burn Gibbs out and risk him for getting injury as well. So that's the first guy that I think the Lions would be smart to pounce on to bring in as we continue to go down the home stretch of the regular season. Now, player number 2. As I said, we are already very, very well acquainted with this player, and that's Tracy Walker III. The reason why we're acquainted with him is, well, 1, we're the team that drafted him, and 2, up until last year, he was on the team with us. Tracy Walker is a guy that had long been a starter for us on our defense. So Tracy Walker, we already know, is a quality level player. And on top of that, You try and tell me right now, one player out on the freaking defense right now that, excuse me, has an intimate knowledge of this defense to where there is literally going to be no learning curve. Because think about it, the defense that we have right now is the exact same defense we had when Tracy Walker was with us last year. And let's go back to when Tracy Walker got cut. Tracy Walker didn't get cut because of performance issues. He got cut because of cap salary issues. The Lions were trying to find ways to save cap. It was not because of the fact that Tracy Walker was not performing well. Well, okay, you clearly now have a defensive back need. You clearly now have an issue with having depth in the defensive secondary. Because the reason why I bring that up is, that's right. Go back to the press conference that was yesterday with Dan Campbell, and the reporters specifically asked Campbell, they're like, well, now that, Carlton Davis is going to be out for a significant piece of time, we don't know if he's coming back. What is the plan for filling his spot? And Dan Campbell specifically said that he talked to Aaron Glenn about it. They have multiple thoughts. They're having different opinions as to what's the best route to potentially, fulfill that spot. And one of those reasons, one of those ideas, one of those plans potentially is to move Brian Branch from his safety spot and drop him down to cornerback. The reason why that makes sense is because the very first year that Brian Branch came into the league, he played at cornerback, and he actually played very damn well. Not as well as he's playing at safety right now, but still at a very high level. Well, okay then, here's the reason why bringing in Tracy Walker makes sense to me. As we already know, Kirby Joseph is not going anywhere. Kirby Joseph has already locked down his spot. But at the current moment, outside of Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch, the only other safety option you really have is Brandon Joseph. And I got nothing against Brandon Joseph. But if you're going to ask me who I would prefer to have in a situation, whether I'd want Tracy Walker or I'd want, Brandon Joseph, I will take Tracy Walker every day of the week, twice on Sunday. But I also know that based upon this conversation, people are going to be like, well, David, didn't you also hear that the Lions are starting the clock on Ife Melifonwu? Yes, I do remember that. But also remember this. This is not the first time the Lions have started his clock. The last time they started his clock, he got another injury that they knew was not going to get healed in time, so they had to start his clock, activate him, and then put him back on IR so that injury could get healed. So what I'm trying to say here is it's good to have an insurance policy in case something like that happens again, or if for whatever reason it's going to take longer than the potential 1, 2, 3 weeks that it's going to be for him to get back up to speed. And even if that all happens, there's no re-aggravated injury, there's no timeline or a time gap between when he's activated to when the Lions can get him on the field, it still would be a smart idea, in my opinion, to bring in Tracy Walker because of the simple fact that, again, we've been having a lot of injury problems this year. So it always is good to have depth. It's always good to have a backup option. And again, like I said in the very beginning part of when I started talking about Tracy Walker, there is quite literally nobody out on the free agent market that has such an intimate knowledge of this defense that you can quite literally pick up off of the street, you can bring him in, and he already knows the defense like that. The only real concern you'd have to have with Tracy Walker is whether or not he is in game shape to be able to come in and play right away. But I have no doubt that being Tracy Walker and the fact that he's a consummate professional and he was able to come back from when he had that major injury 2 years ago, he'll be just fine. So for me, bringing in Tracy Walker would solve a number of problems, and it would also check off some boxes as far as having reserve options. It allows you to not only allow Branch to go and play cornerback, but it also potentially allows you to have less stress on potentially, if for whatever reason someone else gets injured, we are now scrambling again. Because if you bring in Tracy Walker, again, you've got more options. You've got more ways to potentially work the roster around to make sure you don't have a whole hell of a lot of holes. And the reason why I'm saying that is because I know for the cornerback position right now, everybody is looking at the fact that, realistically, the only true cornerback that we have that's worth a damn and actually is good is Terrion Arnold. That's it. Because I know this for a fact, ain't nobody wanting to see Kindle Vildor on the freaking field anymore. So it's like, okay, we are hoping and praying that we'll get to see Mosley here before too long because we've been wondering when the Thunder he was going to come back. We're also hoping and praying for Rakestraw to get back sooner rather than later. So it's like, okay, there are cornerback options that we currently have on this team. But until we actually, one, see what they can provide, two, how they're going to hold up, I still think it would be a smart idea to bring in another defensive back in Tracy Walker who knows this system very intimately and can be an instant boost, not only in terms of talent, in terms of rotational depth, but also in terms of leadership to this team. Remember, Tracy Walker used to be a captain for the Detroit Lions, so there is a lot of value that he can provide to this team. And again, tell me I'm wrong in this right here, but do you honestly think that Tracy Walker would not want to play for the Detroit Lions in the current position and would take a very, very team-friendly deal to do so? He hasn't really had a chance to play this year because after he left us, he got picked up by the 49ers and they really didn't do anything with him. And the 49ers this year are floundering. That's why I'm saying, not only for Tracy Walker, but for Edwards-Helaire, these guys could provide some instantaneous, not only relief in certain areas, but now you have options in areas where it's absolutely, prudent you have to have them. So for me, I think that getting these two would be a great, move by Brad Holmes. Now, whether or not Brad Holmes does it, I have no idea. I know this for a fact. Brad Holmes sometimes will make moves, and you know what? It lines up with what fans want to do. Such as, hey, you know what? When he went out and signed Jake Bates, everyone was clamoring for him to go and get him. But there are other times where he goes out and he makes moves that have absolutely no correlation with what fans want. So I'm curious to see what Brad Holmes does. He could decide to sign one, both, or none. We'll have to wait and see. But these are two guys that I think that would really help the Lions if we were to get them. Having said that, I'm going to end this episode and say thank you all for watching in another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, I highly encourage you all to do one of these three things: like, comment, and subscribe. If by chance you subscribed in the past and you forgot to do so at the time, I want to highly encourage y'all, please make sure you hit that bell notification icon so that way you guys never miss any more content I push out. Also want to encourage y'all, please, to share the content with your Lions friends and family members. Share here on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. Share anywhere and everywhere you possibly can, because the more we can do that, the greater the channel can grow and spread. And with that being said, I hope everybody got something out of the content. I hope you all are doing a fantastic job in your life. You all got something that makes you happy, makes you smile. And whether or not this is the first time watching me or this is, the upteenth time you're watching me, I hope you all enjoyed the content most of all. God bless, my friends. And until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.